In this video from We Are Racing, and most reputable shops will sell motul. Right guys, and welcome back. And in line with our series of videos on DIY car, do-it-yourself car maintenance and looking after your own car, and in line with the last two videos that we've posted, which is around changing the engine oil and changing the diff oil, we've now got the privilege of having Taki from Motul with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And we're going to try and catch him out with a couple of questions around oils and get him to explain a few things to us, hopefully. So the idea is, Taki, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, and if you can answer those for us, I'd really appreciate it.
Alright, I'll try, attempt my best to answer, see what we can get, and give you guys all the best facts I can.
Awesome stuff. But before we start, thank you so much for Motul for being on board with this, and thank you for the sponsorship. We really appreciate it. It's very unexpected, and we appreciate it more than what you guys can think. And if you buy any oils out there, guys, make sure it's Motul. They make a full range of oils for every single application that you can think about. So there's no real reason for you not to buy a proper high performance oil for your application.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for including us in this. I think it's just a vital thing to try assist the end users in oil selection, because often I do find they are choosing the wrong oils, or they stand in front of a shelf and aren't sure what's next, what do we do next. And it's important just to start seeing that there are differences, and ask the right questions when you're buying oil to make sure that you're always getting the correct product for your application.
And most reputable shops will sell motul. If you get to your shop and they don't sell motul, just question. You know what I'm saying? Right, so let's start. So Taki, I've got my car at home. I've decided to drain the engine oil, and now I sit with 5 liters of used oil in a bucket. Can I dump it in the drain? What do I do with it?
No, so definitely not. From that point of view, oil can do serious harm to the environment and the places that you put it. So it's very important to collect that oil in a can or anything that you can, just keep it together. If you don't have a safe place to dispose of it in your house, you can go to a workshop. Many workshops will be happy to assist. They've got a drum outside that people come collect the oil. The Rose Foundation does a great job, and they'll dispose of it in the correct manner, and that's the best way to possibly get rid of oil without doing any damage to the environment, and keep your site clean, because that's the big end goal.
Does that automatically mean that people who drive Land Rover and Ford are damaging the environment when they leave it on the driveway?
We
You don't have to answer that.
on that.
Have to answer that. Right, for my next question, Taki, what are the dangers of running the wrong type of oil in my car? For instance, this car, the specification is fully synthetic only, and I decide to go with the mineral oil. Is that the correct term?
So the specifications are generally not only spec'd on the base oil group. There are lots that are coming out on base oil groups, but the oil's formulated around the engine, and all the engines have different components. And I get a lot of questions, but oil is oil. And you'll have different types of oils with different additive packages, different viscosities, and that's all designed around the exact components of the car. So if you've got a certain, I would say all the tolerances are different from one engine to the other, and that's where your performance is coming from. A lot of the new modern cars have a lot tighter tolerances, and you have to make sure you got the right oil. And also a big aspect that comes in with your mineral to synthetic is you start reducing the amount of friction in the oil. So if you're using a mineral where the car is specified for synthetic, you can pick up trouble by increasing friction, and with friction you increase the heat generated in the engine, and we want to try to keep that as low as possible. That ensures engine longevity and oil longevity, and just an overall benefit for the end user with cost over the longer period of time.
So say for instance, and let's refer to this car that we're building here, the Lotus. Originally the 20 valve motor from Toyota is a front wheel drive application. It's a very high revving motor. It gets up to 9,000 RPM or something. And that's okay, because there's a specification of oil for that guy, and I know what it is, and it's all cool, and we're going to use the right oil. But now I've gone and I've married it to a 5-speed Ford gearbox, which comes off a Ford motor that typically maybe revs 5.5 or 6,000 RPM. Can I, with oil, compensate in the gearbox to make sure that I can handle those higher RPMs and those higher performance figures?
So oil is a vital part of the protection required. Now you're stringing a very strong motor to a gearbox that wasn't intentionally designed for that application. So now to use, it's very vital to be using a very good product that has a strong oil film strength. That way you can try eliminate as far as possible the metal on metal contact in your gearbox, and also the additive packages in the oil will be designed around a high performance application. So oil really brings a protection package with it to ensure the longevity of that gearbox. If you go out of the spec, or if you go onto a very basic spec oil, you might not have that strength that protects your gears from touching each other, and you could see increased wear rates and shorten the lifetime of that gearbox.
So is it fair to say that gearboxes have been practicing social distance because they're not allowed to touch? I don't know. Okay. Why do they call it the weight of the oil? That's always confused me, because I don't know anything about oil, but I know that the W doesn't mean weight. But why do they refer to it as the weight of the oil?
So often, I think, I'm not 100% sure on the origin of the weight of the oil, but from my personal opinion, I think the weight comes down to the viscosity of the oil. And the guys see the W on a can, call it a 5W30 they see, and they think that the W represents the weight of the oil and related to the actual viscosity of the oil.
Right, so funny you should mention 5W30 because you guys will remember from the previous video, or one of the previous videos, this is the exact oil that we used in the 370Z, because it's actually specified by the manufacturer that we should use a fully synthetic, 100% synthetic. It says so on the side over here. It must be true. It's a bit like the huisgenoot. It's 5W30, specifically EFE, which has got something to do with the fuel efficiency or something. Can you explain 5W30 for us, please?
Okay, so with something like this, when you're working with a bottle like this, I'd almost like to take us through the whole label and help the end user understand the oil they're buying. So if
Please
we
do,
start
yes.
with SAE 5W30, that's the most common, and people do understand they have to buy the right viscosity for their car. So SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers, has a grading system to standardize viscosities and classify viscosities so that you know which viscosity you're buying. So the 5W represents the viscosity of the oil at low temperatures. So you've got, when you start your car, even in South Africa, it does get cold. Your car's not at 100 degrees Celsius the moment you start it, so you need to understand the properties of that oil at cold temperatures. And that's where most of the wear happens on a car. So if you've got a very high number, so call it a 15W, but the car requires a 5W, it means it will take a lot longer for that oil to circulate through the engine. You'll have excessive wear occurring, and that you want to minimize that. So staying with what the manufacturer requires, a 5W, the oil will circulate a lot quicker, and you eliminate wear from that point of view. Then the second number, the 30 in this case, is the properties of the oil at operating temperature. So that's when you're driving your car, it's at 95 degrees Celsius, your oil is probably around between 100 and 108, 110 degrees Celsius. And this gives you what the oil's properties or characteristics are at that temperature, and how it fills up all the different little cracks and grooves in your engine to make sure that we don't have metal on metal contact and social distancing is adhered to inside the engine. Then the other vital part on this is, on the can we've got a little donut. It says API service SN, and that also says SA5W30. That gives an API number. All cars will have a different API number. Some won't have an API number, but most of the cars have a certain API specification that you have to stick to, and it would be something like SM or SN, and that gives you an idea of what oil to buy for that car as well. Then there's another block that says ACEA, and that's generally what's found on European vehicles. You'll have an ACEA grade rating. On this one it's a C2/C3. Generally you'd have like a C3 or a C2, A3B4. There's a whole lot of different standards, but your owner's manual can tell you that. We at Motul have also created an online platform that you can go into our oil selector, type in your vehicle details, it will give you all the Motul products that are correct for your use. So that helps eliminate, when you're selecting the oil, which direction to go to. Then on the big bulk of the can, we've got a whole lot of manufacturers with numbers next to them. And that's the actual approvals of this product. So this product has been sent to these manufacturers, they've tested a sample, they've approved that the formulation on this product, it meets their standard. So they've taken an API or an ACEA standard, they've elaborated on it, they've added some requirements to actually meet the standard, and then they name it their standard for that engine that they've built, because that engine might require something additional of the lubricant. And those are the vital things that, from my opinion, are very important for the end user to go look at and ensure he's buying the right oil from that point of view.
What does the 8100 and the EFE mean?
So this is Motul's naming structure. Our 8100 is our 100% synthetic range. So then you know 8100 range, it's 100% synthetic, and you're buying that. And X-Clean, not to go into too much technical detail, but it represents, from a Motul point of view, a bit of the properties of the product, the SAPS content, the HTHS content, and then EFE is extreme fuel economy. So we have driven this product around lowering the internal friction of the oil, so dropping the lubricant's internal friction, reducing the friction in the engine, and gaining fuel economy. And the fuel economy is gained because the engine isn't fighting against any molecules anymore, and it frees up a bit of power. You're not using power to fight oil, you're using power to get power in the end. And by increasing the power, you're increasing fuel economy and overall performance of the car.
Will that make my car extremely fuel efficient?
Well, again, your car's not quite designed to be extremely fuel efficient, but it can assist in the fuel efficiency benefits on the car. But you'll also see a difference in the power output. It's not, every driver is not going to feel it, but it is a drive to try and make cars more economical around environmental impacts, because there's a big drive globally, and many people see the manufacturers doing it, but don't realize that the oil plays a vital role in that as well.
Absolutely, and I can tell you for a fact that I felt absolutely no difference when I put this motul oil in my car recently, because we've always used motul products in our cars, so I wouldn't know. So growing up, when we stopped at the garage, and I mean, my mum had an old jalopy, which we refer to as a jalopy. It was a 1981 or 83 Toyota Corolla that she drove. And when we pulled into the garage, every so often the attendant would say to us, "Ish, it needs a pint, okay?" And then he would say, "What would you like?" And my mom would say, "Multigrade." What is multigrade and what does that mean?
So originally you only had monograde lubricants, and they would, for instance, you'll have a SAE 40, and that represents that lubricant is designed at 100 degrees Celsius to be in the viscosity range of the 40. But you don't know the cold temperature characteristics of that well. So multigrades were introduced by various refining techniques and adding an additive called a viscosity index improver, and that allows the oil. It's not that it changes the oil as such, but it reduces the rate at which the viscosity drops of the oil. Viscosity does decrease with temperature, so by reducing that rate, you allow the oil to have a larger operating temperature range. So it prevents wear at cold startup, but still ensures you've got your protection at hot operating conditions.
So if I help me with this quickly, there's synthetic, fully synthetic, hybrid, and mineral oil. So those are the three types, correct?
Yeah, so you've got a mineral-based stock and a synthetic-based stock, and then a combination of the two will give you a semi-synthetic, and that's a blend of the two. In Motul's case, we've trademarked a name called Technosynthes, and that's our representation of a semi-synthetic lubricant.
What does that mean? What does it mean to me? I mean, why am I more interested in the synthetic, fully synthetic oil in this high-performance car versus something else?
So depending on where the base stock comes from and how it's developed, you have different contaminants that are eliminated through refining processes, and as you move through that refining process, you will adjust from a mineral to a semi-synthetic, and then a fully synthetic 100% synthetic product is made in a lab, and you can really control the molecules that you put into that lubricant. And a big part that's played with this is the friction capability, or the friction inside the oil, the internal friction of the lubricant. And by reducing that friction, you save the car. Even on a non-high performance vehicle, you reduce friction, you reduce wear, but also oil film strength. So the actual pressure that oil film can withstand before it breaks and results in metal-on-metal contact. So there's a lot of additional properties as well. Like I mentioned, viscosity index earlier. Your synthetics have a much higher viscosity index, so their operating temperature range is a lot larger. So if you do tend to run hot, you've got better protection with a synthetic than what you would have with a mineral.
So much better application for when I take this car to the track.
Yes.
Okay.
But then, like, another thing is you've also got good minerals and less good minerals. So it all comes down to that refining process and who the supplier is, understanding where those oils come from. And I think just a very important thing for end consumers to ask the right questions. The manufacturers are open with what they're doing, and they'll tell you what's going on and advise you in the best way possible.
Excellent. So we also changed the diff oil in a previous episode, and what we used for that, per your website, thank you very much, is an SAE 7590. So the 7590 we now understand, 100% synthetic, and now I'm looking for it on this oak, and it doesn't actually say, because this is for the limited slip application, which is, oh, there we go, API GL5 versus GL4. Explain.
Okay, so with this product, it's our limited slip application product. It's Gear 300 LS. We've also got Gear 300, which isn't for the limited slip application. It's just the compatibility with the actual limited slip components. Then GL4 and GL5, I mentioned API earlier on the SN or SM. API GL4 and GL5 are the global gearbox standards. So that's the gear lubricant standard. And GL4 is generally for a gearbox application, where GL5 generally for a differential application. It's not set in that type of it's not exactly that, but I would say always look at the owner's manual and understand what's required. The GL5 is generally for a higher pressure application, where you've got more torque or more pressure on the gears, hypoid gears for example, whereas the GL4 is for a less strenuous application. There are a lot of products that are GL4 and GL5. This one's labeled GL5, but it is a GL4 and GL5 product, can be used in both the gearbox and the differential.
Awesome stuff. I think that's more or less what I wanted to cover from an oil point of view. Please let us know in the comments if you guys have any specific questions. We've got Taki's number now. He might regret that, but we've got his number now. If you guys have any specific questions around oils that we maybe didn't cover or didn't answer, comment below, and we will be happy to answer those questions for you. Taki, thank you very much for taking the time to come and visit us today. Again, thank you very much for Motul being on board with this project, and all the best.
Thank you very much, and yeah, I hope that helps and clarifies a couple of the questions people might have, and please feel free to leave any questions you guys have in the comments. Graham will get hold of me, and I'll give you guys any answers that I possibly can, and if I can't, I'll ask the really clever guys in France from Motul headquarters to assist me with that as well. So between us, we'll always try to get you guys the best answer and the best solution for your application.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you.
Cool. Always remember that life is too short to drive boring cars.